Welcome to Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. This is the online information session for the School of Japan Studies.
For the introduction, I am Nobuo Haruna, the Vice President for International Affairs and teaching at the School of Japan Studies. So I would like to give you a general introduction of the entire university, and after that I'll talk about the School of Japan Studies. So first of all, let me show you my slides. Okay, then let me start with this first slide, fostering global literacy. Well, I'm not so sure whether you know this university, the University of Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. It is a national university in this country, but it is a very small university, so it is not that well known outside this country. So therefore, I would like to start with a general introduction of this university. Well, I believe if you know something about Japan, if you know something about university education, I believe you know some of these universities, such as the University of Tokyo, Osaka University, Kyoto University, Tohoku University. These are the most prestigious universities in Japan. Well, compared to these universities, as I just mentioned, our university is not that well known outside Japan. But if you look inside Japan, this is the university rankings of inside Japan by Times Higher Education. Our university, Tokyo University of Foreign Studies, is ranking 27 this year among the 800 universities in Japan. Well, the biggest difference between our university and these universities that are well known outside Japan is that the size is very different. You can see here that the University of Tokyo, Osaka University, or like Kyoto University, they have students more than 20,000 inside their campus. But our university only has about 4,000 students. So that's the biggest difference between our university and those other universities that are well known. We are a very small university and we are specializing in humanities and social sciences. We do not have natural science or medical science or computer science or those technological schools. Well, but as I just mentioned, inside Japan, this is a well-established national university, and it has a pretty long history. Our university was founded in 1873, so this year we are celebrating the 150th anniversary. This university started as Tokyo School of Foreign Languages. If you know some history of Japan, I believe you know that the mid to late 19th century is the time that Japan started its track of modernization, or in other words, westernization. So at that time, Japan needed to absorb knowledge, technology from the Western world. So therefore, there was much demand for foreign languages, especially Western languages. This school started out with languages such as Dutch, German, English, French, and so on. So it started with Western languages, but with the expansion of international relations of this country, the school started to take in languages in Asia, especially Southeast Asia. Now, after the Second World War, we entered into like South America, Africa, Central Asia, and so on. And so as for now, we teach up to 81 languages. Well, if you just count the major languages, we have 28 major languages, including Japanese and English. Well, anyways, the important point here is that if you come to our university, you will find students learning your language. Find Japanese students learning and studying your language or your region. So therefore, it will be easy to communicate with such students, and it will be easier to make friends with Japanese students in this university. As I just mentioned, we have about 4,000 students on campus each year, but we have a great number of students from abroad as well. As for now, we have 687 students from abroad. I'm pretty sure that this number will be over 700 this September. we'll have more and more students coming in. We are now on the recovering process from COVID-19. Okay, this is let me go on to how our what our graduates are doing. Well, as I mentioned, this is a national university, a well-established one which has history. So actually, a large number of our students will enter public service after graduation. Well, I have to say this is for Japanese students. I have to say that you need a Japanese nationality to enter public service in this country. So as for Japanese students, we have a large number of students entering the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Nowadays, there are more students going to the Ministry of Defense or some local governmental offices as well. As for private companies, Mitsubishi, or in manufacturing, Toyota, Honda, Panasonic, I believe these are pretty large companies in this country. We have a large number of students entering into these companies. I would say that I would add that the former president, CEO of All Nippon Airways, ANA, the the air travel company, was a graduate of our university. Well, nowadays we are having more and more students interested in consulting. So the number of students going into consulting business, such as Accenture, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, these companies are increasing year by year. Okay, let me move on to the School of Japan Studies. This is the focus of this information session today. Well, the School of Japan Studies is a very new school in this university. The entire university has a history of 150 years. The School of Japan Studies only has a history of 4 years. So this was established in 2019. And this is the establishment of this school is to cope with this new situation of globalization of the country of Japan. We are seeing more and more people coming from abroad to study, to work, and to live in Japan. So therefore, we want to educate the students to be ready for a globalized society. People who can collaborate with, who can talk with, who can take leadership with other people, with different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. So therefore, at the School of Japan Studies, we have a very diverse environment. We want to train our students to be used to this kind of environment. This is a pretty small school. We only accept 75 students each year coming to this school. But among the 75, 45 students come from Japanese high schools. The rest come from abroad. And actually, we take in 10 more students from abroad from the third year. So by the time the students graduate from the school, there are about the same number of Japanese students and students from abroad. If you look at the state of the origin country of the students from abroad, you can see that they are coming not just from neighboring countries such as South Korea, China, and Mongolia. We have a larger number of students coming from Southeast Asia, such as Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and so on. We also have a great number of students coming from Australia and Brazil. And we also have a number of students coming from Europe, all over Europe every year as well. Nowadays, we are having some students coming from Africa, such as Egypt and Nigeria. Well, anyways, you can see that we have a very large diversity in the School of Japan Studies, even though this is a pretty small school. And to maintain this diversity, we do not require the students coming from abroad to be proficient in Japanese and to know about Japan. That is what we teach in the School of Japan Studies. So therefore, to put it in other ways, you can enter the School of Japan Studies without any knowledge of Japan and proficiency in the language. Therefore, in the first year, all mandatory courses are taught in English. In the second year as well, you can just go through the second year. So the first 2 years by taking classes taught in English. As I mentioned, you do not need any knowledge of Japan because that is what we provide. We have a very comprehensive education program, ranging from social studies to linguistics. In the first 3 years, all students, whatever your interest is in, will have to take courses in these 4 different fields, starting with social studies. The second is culture and literature. The third is linguistics. And the fourth field is teaching Japanese to non-Japanese students, not just students, non-Japanese speakers. Well, all students will go through all these different courses in the first 3 years so they can build a very broad and deep knowledge base to continue their studying. In the 4th year, all students will just pick up one field, pick up one supervisor, and choose one theme of their own to work on and complete a graduation thesis. So that's how our 4 years go. 3 years, general education. You receive a lot of knowledge and and deepen your knowledge by thinking and so on. And plus, but by the 4th year, you will focus on one specialization. You'll have your field. You'll have your theme of research. Okay, let me move on to language. Well, as I mentioned, you can enter the School of Japan Studies without any proficiency of the language, because here again, we provide a great number of Japanese language lessons. If you enter the School of Japan Studies as a Japanese beginner, in the 1st year, in the 1st semester, all of your morning hours will be allocated to Japanese lessons. So as you can see right in front of you, this is a timetable of a Japanese beginner in his or her 1st year. Well, this is pretty tough. The first period starts at 8:30. The second period ends at 11:40. So 3 hours a day, you have Japanese language lessons. It is tough, but if you go through this period, by the time you reach the 3rd year, you will have quite high proficiency of the language, which means that you can communicate not just with your friends or your neighbors in Japanese, but you can also receive lectures taught in Japanese, which means you can understand what the instructor is speaking in Japanese. You can also read materials written in Japanese, and you will also be able to write your essays in Japanese. This means that you are prepared to go further in studying about Japan, and you can also find a job inside Japan after graduation. Okay, let me move on to the admissions. Maybe for the contents, you can ask the students we have with us in this session. So let me move on to admissions. Well, we have one entrance exam for non-Japanese speakers. This is the English track exam, and this is the exam that I mentioned that you can enter without any proficiency of Japanese language and without any knowledge of Japan. Well, this entrance exam is a 2-stage exam, and you do not have to come to Japan to take this exam. I mentioned 2-staged. The first stage is paper screening. So by the time of application, you have to submit a number of documents. It includes a recommendation letter by your high school principal, your transcript of your a statement written in English about what you want to study in the School of Japan Studies, what you're thinking of about your future career, and so on. Well, once you submit the papers, then we will review the papers, and if you pass the paper screening stage of this exam, then the second stage will be an interview. And this interview will take place online, so therefore you do not have to come to Japan. And this interview will be conducted totally in English. So therefore, throughout this process of admissions, you do not have to use Japanese. You can just go through this period totally in English. Let me talk about the schedule. Well, the application period will start in late August this year, and the deadline would be September 8th this year. Well, if you pass this exam, you will be admitted to the School of Japan Studies starting in April next year. Well, this is the period when schools in Japan starts, April. It might be different from your country, but this is the Japanese system. Well, the application period, to put it very simply, the deadline is September 8th. So that's the time that you have to submit the documents that I have mentioned. If you pass this exam, then the decisions will be released in November. If you are interested in this exam, then please contact us at the school, at the Global Admissions Office, or well, first look into the homepage. There is more detailed admission information. Okay, there's another thing I have to mention. Well, if you are not an English native speaker, so if you did not receive your high school education in English, then in that case, you have to prove your English proficiency. There's no necessity of Japanese proficiency, but you have to prove your English proficiency because this will be the common language for the first 2 years at the School of Japan Studies. The level that we require is CEFR B2. CEFR stands for the Council of Europe Foreign Language Reference, frame of reference, I believe. B2 is in details. Well, you can submit either of these 4 exams: Cambridge, IELTS, TOEFL IBT, or TOEIC. TOEIC is probably not a universal exam. It's mostly for an exam for inside Japan. So probably the choices will be Cambridge or IELTS or TOEFL. If it's Cambridge, B2 means over 160 points. If the exam is IELTS, it means more than 5.5 points. If it's TOEFL IBT, it is over 72 points. You have to prove that you can receive education in English. Okay, one very notable feature of this entrance exam is that this entrance exam comes with the opportunity to receive scholarship provided by the Ministry of Education of Japan. Well, there's no separate admission process. There's no separate process. You just apply to the School of Japan Studies and click a box that you want the scholarship provided by the Ministry of Education. Well, next in this slide stands for the Ministry of Education of Japan. Well, the MEX scholarship is a scholarship accompanied with tuition exemption and a monthly stipend up to about somewhere around $1,000 per month. So it will cover your living costs inside Japan. Well, if you pass the entrance exam among the top 8 students of the entrance exam, and if you meet the other requirements set by the Ministry of Education, you will be qualified to receive this scholarship provided by the Ministry of Education. As for the details, I believe that Ishida-san will explain later, but there are some requirements of age and high school GPA. Well, anyways, you can ask us later about this. Let me move on to another entrance we have for the School of Japan Studies. As I mentioned at the beginning, we also we accept students not just from the first year, but we also accept students from the 3rd year. I'm sorry to say that the 3rd year entrance exam has been finished for this year, so the next intake will be October 2024. The information for this exam will be released in January next year. So please look into our homepage and we'll try to get the latest information, or just contact us at the Global Admissions Office. We'll keep you updated in that case. Well, normally the application period will be from March to May, so 2024 next year, and the entrance exam will take place in May to June. This is also a 2-stage entrance exam with paper screening and an interview. Well, if you want to enter from the 3rd year, the requirement is that you have finished more than 2 years of university education in your home country or in Japan. Well, anyways, you have to finish more than 2 years of, you have to complete more than 2 years of university education. And plus, the biggest difference between the 1st year entrance and this entrance is that we require Japanese proficiency. Because as I mentioned, if you enter from the 1st year, by the time the students reach the 3rd year, they have a pretty high proficiency of Japanese. So therefore, if you want to enter from the 3rd year, you have to prove that you have that kind of Japanese proficiency. So we ask for a score of JLPT N2 level. It doesn't have to be JLPT. There are other exams as well, but we need that level of N2. And for English as well. English, again, set for B2 level. So if it's TOEFL IBT, that is over 72 points. Okay, that is all from me. I would like to end my talk and move on to Ishida-san's explanation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Haruna, for the detailed explanation about the School of Japan Studies. Let me start my part of the presentation. Just a moment, please. And thank you for sending us many questions. I would like to go over many of your questions after my part, and after some of our students will be sharing their experience with you. Let me briefly go over where we are. We are located in Tokyo, about 30 minutes of a train ride from downtown Tokyo, meaning that you can concentrate on your studies in a very quiet residential area and experience the excitement of living in the capital of Japan at the same time. As for the expenses, which probably is one of the big issues that you need to consider, as a national university, our academic fees are relatively low compared with the private universities in Japan. As for the living fees, as I mentioned before, we are located in the suburb of Tokyo. By doing that, you can, the rent is relatively low, and you can, again, concentrate on your studies in a very quiet and safe environment. We are explaining to our prospective students that the living expense per month, the average is around 100,000 yen, which is currently, with the currency issue, it is probably about 714 US dollars. Many people ask about working part-time. If you come on a student visa, you will need to first apply for the so-called working permission at the immigration office. If you are able to get that permission, you will be able to work up to 28 hours a week during the school terms. But since many of the studies, especially in the Japanese languages, as Professor Haruna mentioned, are very demanding and very intensive, so working 20 hours a week during the school term would not be easy, to be honest. Now, talking about expenses, many of you are probably very much interested in the scholarship opportunities. As Professor Haruna mentioned, this School of Japan Studies comes with the Japanese government scholarship opportunity, which is this one. This School of Japan Studies is designated as the priority program under the Japanese government scholarship. Therefore, you can apply for the program and for the scholarship at the same time. You may also know about the Japanese government scholarship through embassy recommendation. For this scholarship, you need to apply through the Japanese embassy in your country. In case of embassy recommendation, you need to apply for the scholarship and apply for the program separately. You need to go through two procedures in order to receive scholarship and in order to start your undergraduate studies here at TUFS. There are also scholarships provided by private foundations in Japan. There are many. However, many of them do require Japanese proficiency. They require you to prepare the scholarship applications in Japanese and also have the scholarship interview in Japanese as well. For these scholarships provided by private foundations, you may apply for it only after you are officially accepted to the university. The university will provide you with the information on the scholarship after you are officially accepted. I will go into details of this Japanese government scholarship, which is designated for the School of Japan Studies later on. Before I go into the details of the scholarship, let me briefly explain about the support that this university will able to provide you during your 4 years studies at the School of Japan Studies. We have the healthcare center, which provides the health support to all the students of this university. There is a prayer space located in the building where most of the classes are being held. We do have an accommodation of 3 international residents on campus. However, since the number is limited, we cannot guarantee a room at this moment. And even if you have been granted with a room, there is a limitation on the time that you can reside there, which currently is basically 6 months. During those 6 months, the students will find an apartment nearby the campus. However, since we are located in the suburb of Tokyo, the rent is not that high, and there's not much difference with the dorm fee. And the university will also be able to provide you with the adequate information in regards to finding an apartment. I understand that many of you are also thinking about working in Japan after graduating from the School of Japan Studies. We have a global career center, which provides students with the job opportunity information and consultation. There is a counselor who specializes in the job hunting of international students. This counselor will check your resumes and also prepare for your job interviews. Talking about careers, and I just mentioned about the Global Career Center. Professor Haruna also mentioned about the career opportunities of the graduate of this university as a whole. This slide shows especially the information regarding the non-Japanese students of the past 3 years. As you can see, about half of the students were able to find a job and start their jobs after graduating from this university. Some have pursued into the graduate schools. Some has returned to their own countries. And to be honest, some have been still preparing for their jobs or the future studies when they graduated. The type of the jobs that they were able to get, starting out with the trading companies, manufacturers, and consulting firms. To be honest, not all of these companies are the so-called major companies in Japan. In order for the international students to find a job in Japan, first of all, having a high Japanese proficiency is necessary. Also, you may have heard about the job hunting process in Japan. We call it shukatsu, which starts very early at the stage, maybe at the 3rd year of the undergraduate. But not all the international students has went through those procedures. The counselor that I just mentioned will provide the international students with the adequate advices on how to find jobs in Japan. So I have been recommending to all the international students of this university to first contact this counselor at the Global Career Center if they are thinking of pursuing their career in Japan. Okay, now let me go into the application information and the scholarship. As Professor Haruna mentioned, we will be accepting the application for the School of Japan Studies from the late August. We send an email when we send this Zoom information that we recommend you to download the admission information so that you will be, this information session will be benefit for you. I hope many of you have already downloaded the information because most of the information that I will be explaining here is already covered in those information. The schedule, as Professor Haruna already mentioned, I will skip it here. I believe many of you are interested in the scholarship opportunities. As Professor Haruna mentioned, applicants who meet the eligibility will also be screened for the admission and also for the scholarship. We will recommend to the Ministry of Education up to 8 successful applicants with the outstanding admission results who also meet the eligibility of mixed scholarship. When we talk about this, as Haruna Sensei briefly mentioned, the benefit of this scholarship is the monthly scholarship, exemption of admission fee and tuition, and also travel expense to and from Japan. But this is only when you enter and when you graduate from TUFS, okay? And the duration of the scholarship is within the standard years of enrollment, which for the undergraduate, it is in principle 4 years. However, in order for you to continue receiving the scholarship, you have to meet the academic performance requirement, which is relatively high, which means that you need to keep a very high academic performance in order for you to keep receiving this scholarship during your enrollment here. Okay, and I understand that many of you are interested in the eligibility of this scholarship. So let me change the screening now to the actual admission information. Okay. Okay, so I do hope that many of you have already downloaded this admission information. And when you go through this, you will realize that there are 2 eligibilities that you need to meet. First eligibility starts with page 2, which is the eligibility to apply for the School of Japan Studies. Okay, there's the eligibility requirement and also qualifications. Both, you need to meet both of them. Okay, and here it is also stated that those who are interested in applying for the Japanese government scholarship should refer to pages 12 and 14. So let me jump to pages 12 and 14. Okay. Now here it starts the eligibility requirements and the details of the Japanese government scholarship. Okay, so please read the eligibility requirement very carefully. And please note that this eligibility stated on this form was for the 2023 admission. The information is subject to change for April 2024 admission. We are only able to provide you with the 2023 information because the information for the 2024 hasn't been announced yet. So let me refer to some of the major points, okay? You need to have the average grade points of 2.30 or higher for the most recently attended degree program, okay? And this 2.30 is not GPA. They have their own calculation, which 3.0 is the full mark. So that is why we need to ask you to send your academic transcript for both high school and the most recently attended degree program, okay? Another point is that there is an age limit for this scholarship. To apply for the Japanese School of Japan Studies, there is no age limit to apply for the undergraduate program. However, for Japanese government scholarship, there is an age limit. For 2023 admission, it was that you had to be born on or after April 2nd, 1999. Okay, so it is expected to be April 2nd, 2000 for the coming year, but it hasn't been announced yet. Okay. And another point that we need to inform you that you need to be newly arriving to Japan, and you must arrive between the dates designated here, okay, which usually is early April. Okay, we will also ask you to submit a health certificate stating that the applicant has no physical or mental conditions hindering the applicant's study in Japan. Okay. And you must newly obtain a student visa at the Japanese diplomatic mission located in your country of nationality. So these are the requirements stated by the Japanese government scholarship. So please go through this admission information very carefully before you decide to apply for the School of Japan Studies and also for this Japanese government scholarship. Okay. So let me return to my slides once again to just briefly end up my part of the presentation. Okay. Okay. So what you should do now, okay, 3 steps for preparation. Again, download the most updated admission information, which I just mentioned. Okay. We do require some kind of English proficiency proof. If you are a non-native English speaker, you are requested to submit an official English test score, okay? But, or if you have graduated from a high school which the language of instruction was all in English, then you need to submit a certificate issued by the high school stating so. Again, please check the application period and prepare accordingly. Please note that we only accept applications through postal services. We do not accept applications online. You are requested to send your application documents in paper form to be arrived at during the application period. We do not accept any late submission. Okay, so please check the period and prepare accordingly. I understand that many of you may be interested in the graduate schools. We have 2 graduate programs that are offered all in English. For the master's program, we have the we have the Peace and Conflict Studies course. And for the doctoral program, we have the Joint Doctoral Program for Sustainability Research. If you're interested in either of these, please send us an email to our Global Admissions Office or register yourself through this TUFS inquiry form to receive any updated information.